I have to thank my panelists here. We have across my screen Amy Selwyn, Jamie Carroll, and Stacy Ellman. You've read their bios. You've asked some really, really great questions for them. The way that this class is going to go is we're going to ask some questions of our panelists. We're going to have some back and forth. The intent here is really just to dive in and see if we can create a conversation here with some resident experts on how to be a more work-ready communicator, how to go out into the world and to be able to inspire meaningful action in every interaction as emerging leaders. And before we hopped on about a week ago, or maybe a couple weeks ago at this point, I asked each speaker to come up with 1 to 3 ideas around communication that they could impart to you all. So I love getting right down to it. I don't love doing introductions or stories or anything like that. So I really like to just roll in on the top. And if each individual is going to impart how to be a more confident, clear, and compelling communicator, what would that be? And maybe we could do one each, and we'll just kind of cycle through those. Looking at my screen here, Stacy, I would love for you to jump in first, if you could.
Awesome. Firstly, Michael, thank you for having me. And I know I can't see everyone, but it's really great to be here. I will give a short preface. I've never done anything like this, so bear with me if I take some time to collect my thoughts. If I stutter a little bit, this is my first time doing this. And I'll kick it off with, I think that my number one communication tactic that I try and follow is to mirror the energy of the person that you're talking to. And whether that's the physical energy they're giving you, the vibe that they're giving you, also the language that they're communicating in. But I think that, the first 10 seconds that you start talking to someone, you'll automatically right away have an instinct of what energy they have and how the energy of the conversation and how they want it to flow. And the more you mirror that, the more you'll be able to form that connection with them.
Stacy, thanks for that. So a lot of them, the students will be going on interviews. A lot of them will be over video. Most interviews nowadays are happening over video. So as a follow-up question to what you mentioned, Stacy, do you feel there are different techniques you would use over video versus in person? Are there obstacles in either one of those settings?
Definitely. I think that the barrier of having things on videos, you can't fully see someone's body language, right? So I think part of that is being very calm and slow and taking time and pausing between every time that you are going to communicate, giving it some time because you can't see someone's, what their hands are doing sometimes. So just, I think, pausing before you speak, taking the time to collect your thoughts. I think there's an expectation where when someone asks you a question, especially in an interview, you have to answer right away. I think that if you actually pause and even say aloud, give me a moment to just, think about this, get my thoughts together. I suggest doing that, especially when you're in a video setting, because you're on the spot and you feel like you have to be very quick to answer, and you don't always have an answer right away.
So it sounds like giving yourself the permission and space to go, I need a second, let me think about that. Now, just one last follow-up question. That pause for some folks might seem like 3 hours. 10 seconds might seem like a forever. What would you say to that? Is that you feel like, hey, it's okay, they'll wait kind of thing?
I actually think the pause shows active listening. I think when you pause, it's showing you're taking 3 seconds, even 5 seconds, digest what the person's saying, think about it, and then come back with an answer. And it maybe even shows more that you're reflecting more on what their question is, whereas instead of just saying the first thing that came to your head.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Stacy. Jamie, I'd love to jump over to you for one of your tips or one of your strategies.
Yes. Echoing everything Stacy said. I love that. And I really want to emphasize how wonderful the pause is before you answer anything. For me, it's putting your focus on the other person so that you're not focusing so deeply on yourself, and finding your way through curiosity about how do you connect with them. So you're focusing more on what it is you're trying to do and not watching how you're doing it. Because the minute we start watching ourselves too deeply, we become self-conscious we lose the connection with the other person. And really, that is the thing that matters the most, is how do I connect with this person across the way, no matter what walk of life they might be coming from, meeting them where they are, as Stacy said, and then making sure that you're staying present with them, focusing on what it is you're trying to impart, whether that's information that you're trying to give them or a connection that you're trying to make with them.
Jamie, how do you manage, or how would you suggest managing the balance between your objective versus going wherever this moment kind of takes you? Because what I heard you say was you're there kind of one unanticipated moment to the next, putting your attention on this other person. If you're someone that's looking for a job or trying to get money for an investment or something like that, how do you ensure that, you don't go so far off track, or is it good to go off track?
I think it's actually better. Well, here's what I think. For everybody that I've ever worked with, and that's from actors to CEOs of companies who are going into VCs, having 3 bullet points that you're going to go in with, 3 points that you know that you want to hit, but then staying open to the moment, because we've all been on the other side of somebody that comes in with a plan, and the plan is far too rigid and feels like they're not really meeting us. We're just being thrown their ideas or what it is they're trying to impart. And we always walk away from interactions with people that make us feel something with a different mindset. Mm-hmm. So really reaching out to where somebody is, following the path, getting to know them, and taking the chance of dropping the plan, staying present. That, I think, has been my biggest lesson throughout every business I've ever worked in. Is we think it has to go a certain way, but it doesn't. It's more important that you make that human connection with somebody.
Jamie, thank you for that.
Yep.
Amy, thoughts and strategies?
Yeah, well, we were joking before the call started that if you are on a panel or part of a panel, you should have backup answers in case the other 2 people give your answers. So Jamie said curiosity, and so I very quickly, I developed 9 points just in case, but ever prepared. Jamie used the word curious, and I think, with a background in journalism, if you're not curious, then you're in the wrong field. But, when you're in any conversation, to be curious about the other person is the absolute key, because people we love to be asked things. We love to have people have interest in us. And one of the things that I would say to expand upon that, so that I don't just give the same answer as someone else, I kind of developed this about 20 years ago, where I think of a conversation, a presentation, an interview as a partnership. And here's what I mean by that. We are partnering in conversation to create something. We're co-creating. The better the conversation we co-create, the more satisfying to both of us. So instead of thinking of it as, oh my God, this is all my responsibility, I've got the discussion guide, oh, we didn't cover point number 6. No, think of it as it's a partnership. We're dancing together a little bit, and yes, it may go in a different direction. If something is really vital, then you need to take a little bit more of you need to lead your partner a little bit and say, this is amazing. I want to go back to something because I'm curious about it. Show that you're leading. It's okay. So the person knows, oh, we're going back in that direction, but partner with them, create something, co-create.
One of the statistics that I always bring up in class is that 86% of any problem in business is communication related. And I believe, and there's 3 kind of assumptions that come up as to why this is. 1, people believe that communication comes naturally. It doesn't. 2, believe that communication is working as it is. It's not. And 3, they believe that it doesn't cost anything to be a bad communicator. It does. Amy, just as a follow-up question, I believe personally that great communication is somewhat of an unnatural act for a human being, because you have to set aside what your brain wants you to do to survive, which is to just scan the horizon for anything that might be different and single that thing out, aka back to your 2 million year old brain going, oh shoot, a bear over there, I've never seen that before, that's different, that's the thing I need to worry about. Do you feel that curiosity is natural, unnatural, combination?
I think it's semi-natural. I think we are born curious, and some of us are more encouraged in that area than others. But it's like playing tennis, or anything that you do. The more you practice, the better you get at it. So we have the natural innate ability and desire to be curious. Otherwise, we would never create anything. But
Right.
we also are taught to be very outcome focused. And so that gets in the way of curiosity, that you're so much in pursuit of the deliverable that you forget to ask, gee, I forgot to ask, were you actually, were you planning to wear a mask the entire time? Or, I didn't ask about it. Yeah. Right. You're dressed as a lion, but I didn't ask you.
Mm. You helped me realize something, Amy, is that as children, we seem to be naturally curious.
Well, yeah.
And you should, well, why? Well, why? What's wrong with your face? Well, why? These questions kind of come out of children, and it seems like, and it sounds like, as adults, we sort of have to relearn to embrace that childlike curiosity. Is that something you'd agree with?
Totally. Totally.
Mm.
But yeah, to be curious and to the best of our abilities to try to put judgment, because we're making judgments as we scan our environment, 24/7, some more than others, but try to take that judgment and here's a little trick. You're never going to get rid of it. We just can't. But what we can say to ourselves is, okay, I will attend to you later. I'm going to take this big
Mm.
stack of judgment and I'm just going to put it over here for now. And I'm going to listen. And the judgment is there. I can go over there anytime I want and pick it up again. But just suspend it. And that is another thing that, that kids are so good at. They're so good at just, someone says, that coffee cup is actually a unicorn. I'm like, oh, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
We're,
And
yeah, really cool. Thank you for demonstrating. Yeah.
yeah. Stacy, I love what you said about mirroring and really kicking things off. And this was not planned, by the way. I love that you started this whole conversation around putting your attention on the other person, because it's something I personally believe is the key to everything. As kind of a second tip or tactic, is there something else that you'd like to share with the group?
Something, and this kind of goes off also the pausing when you are speaking to someone, and again with being curious and asking those questions. Something that I try and do, and this is also, I mean, I think we all experience on a daily basis, your mind wanders sometimes when you're talking to someone, and you just can't help it. And the best way to get your mind to stop wandering is to ask questions that will make you more interested, become more curious. Something I try and do is when someone answers me or gives me, or gives me a response to something, I summarize that out loud. I actually summarize their response. This shows that you're actually, not only are you listening, and you're showing that you're listening, and but you're also opening up the door for them to communicate more, because when you summarize what they said, they're always going to want to add on more information, or open up to you a bit more, because it really shows that you're with them. You're repeating what they're saying, which I think it goes along also with the whole theme of active listening.
Hmm. Do you have any specific tactics on how to summarize?
Simple as, like, just to make sure I got this right, and repeating what they said,
Mm.
repeating the last few things of what they said, like, do I understand this properly? Asking questions after you repeat what they said is another way to just open up the door for them to communicate with you more, to tell you more information.
So it sounds like you have to kind of get their sign off on what they said and make sure they're heard before you interject with what your point might be, or how the conversation might next move in the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. I just did it right there. Amy, is there a part two for strategies and tactics? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think It's wonderful that we're all talking about the importance of the other person and being curious about them. And then the first beast that you have to deal with is yourself and your nervous system as you're walking through the door. And anytime we're walking into moments of high pressure or high stress, we are faced with our breath, with every nerve we've ever had coming back alive at very inopportune moments. Having strategies and techniques that take you through that, for me, have been key. And there's two that I use with every client I work with. The first one is just a round of quick box breathing, where you're literally inhaling for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and holding that for 4. You repeat that 2 to 3 times. You can do that in the waiting room. You can do that in the Zoom waiting room. And it's just a wonderful way to get yourself settled. As you're doing that, then there's a performance psychology trick called priming, which is just putting your energy and your focus on moments where you have come through in the past and surprised yourself. Because when we're walking into high anxiety situations, we focus more so on the uncertainty and the unknowable. And I have a lot of clients that will ask me a bunch of questions. What is this going to be like? What's going to happen here? How am I going to deal with this? And to remind yourself to come back to you and say, no, I've dealt with difficult things before. I remember this time when I did this example of walking through here, like, I've got this. So that you're aligning yourself with the story you want to be telling as you walk through the door, as you walk onto the stage or any important moment of your life. I've got this. Settle the breathing, refocus your thoughts so that you can go forward.
Now, Jamie, for actors, it's all a double-edged sword, of course, whereas actors could be auditioning all the time. So this idea of a job interview for actors happens far frequently, whereas out in the business world, you might have a job interview, keep the job for at least 2, 3 years, 5, 10 years, and then not have been on an interview for 10 years. Are there ways or some thoughts you might have around being able to practice these skills, at least from time to time, so when the moment of truth does come, the individual is ready and not really starting from scratch?
Absolutely. I think all of us can look at moments where we felt anxious. I mean, even just talking to everybody here today, my anxiety kicked in and I thought, well, do I have anything to say? And then I had to go back and remind myself of other moments of, okay, well, this might be helpful. This might add value. So it's something you're doing anytime anxiety pops up, is really just reframing it so that you're not worried so much about what's out there, but reminding yourself what you already have going for you that you can bring to the table. It's another way of saying, here's how I add value. So I think putting your energy back to that frequently empowers you to do better work and to take bigger risks.
I think sometimes, and I would love to hear anyone's thoughts on this, I think sometimes folks feel that with enough repetitions, there just won't ever be anxiety or that kind of thing again. And I just want to illustrate, Amy, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, Amy, did you have any anxiety around speaking today?
Every time I speak.
Okay. So
I participate in something.
I just want to highlight something, that everyone on this panel who has many decades of experience and many decades combined experience, nobody here came in and said, Michael, I'm good, man. I feel great. So I think one of the expectations that I would love to highlight at this moment is that the idea that you're not going to be anxious or not have some level of performance anxiety is just false. And the idea that you're going to walk into these situations that are high pressure, where you're going to connect meaningfully with others and be seen maybe for who you really are, especially in a situation like this where it's live, we're not recording this, like we're getting this in real time. Anxiety is going to be there. So it really sounds like it's more of a question of how do I deal with this or how do I use it rather than how can I not feel it?
100%. 100%.
Amy, do you have to dip into one of your 9 other answers for the next one or points for the next one?
No, I think I'm good. It's kind of been implicit in what has been said so far, but I think it's so important to think about it is the power of story. That, when we communicate with people and people communicate with us and we're partnering to co-create something, being story-led is just a brilliant way of communicating. Being able to say, I can give you an example of that, from my own life. from my own experience. Now, don't monopolize the conversation for the next half an hour, but something where you say, I'm bringing myself to this. I'm sharing a bit of my story. How about you? Have you ever had something similar like that? Or have you ever experienced something like that? Or what do you think? Or what was the most rewarding part of working on that project? Or whatever it is, asking people to bring something, to bring themselves to the conversation rather than swirling around and, sort of corporate speak and academic or theory. Make it real and bring your story. And on the topic of fear, this ties to the point that I'm making. I want to give you an example. See, I just did it. I was working with a woman who was going to be addressing a group of about 650 people from all around the world. It was in English. And the topic of the discussion was online abuse and being threatened online. All the panelists were journalists, and they have been threatened in really hideous ways. I mean, possible, physical harm, possible death, even death threats. And about 5 minutes before she was set to go on as the moderator, she turned to me and said, I can't do this. And I said, and I had to be prepared to do it for her if she really couldn't do it. And I said, how come? And she said, because it's just so personal. It happened to me. It matters so much. I'm so afraid. And I said, that's what you need to tell the audience. So she went out on stage in a quivering voice, looking so small on that stage. And she literally said to them, to a darkened room before introducing her guests, and said, I have to admit, I am terrified because this matters so much to me. Can you even feel the energy on the call? Everyone is sitting forward. Everyone is listening. It's not manipulative. I'm not suggesting absolutely do not do that. But it was real for her. And the guests who were waiting in the wings, the speakers, they came out in a frame of mind that was like, okay, we're going to go for it. We're going to speak our truth. And it was extraordinary.
Amy, I love that story. It reminds me of the distinction someone once made for me, the difference between authenticity and being human. And they said, it's not enough to be authentic, you have to be human. The example they gave is that if you paid $10,000 for a Taylor Swift ticket and you showed up and Taylor comes out on stage and goes, hey, look, everybody, I'm kind of tired. Travis and I just had a fight. I'm not really feeling up to it. My voice is a little scratchy. I'm going to go. I don't really feel my best. I don't really feel like performing. Completely authentic. 100% she's being authentic. Yeah. But that wouldn't be okay because everybody paid $10,000 for a ticket or whatever. And the difference between authentic and human is if she came out and said, you know what, this has been one heck of a day, but I'm going to give you one hell of a show because you're worthy of it and we're worthy of it. And he said, that's being human. And I love the idea of going back, kind of tying this back to having something going on. See, I have a belief that anxiety is actually a superpower because in any story, there has to be something that we push against. I forget what the exact quote is, but if you write a story without conflict or something like that, you're going to bore your audience to tears. So the idea that she walked out there with something to push against is my belief that she is that much more compelling. And I gave an example in class the other day about the Handshake founder. I don't know if you know Handshake. It's a platform for employment. But I watched him speak to a bunch of CIOs. It was like the buying power of $100 billion in the room. And he's in his 20s. And he's like literally up there in front of them like this because it's such a big opportunity. And he did the same thing, Amy. He said, I'm terrified right now because this is a huge opportunity and I don't want to blow it. And they all laughed and he was absolutely brilliant. And they loved him over any other CEO that spoke that day, including the ones that had 40, 50 years of experience or whatever. So I love this, this idea of vulnerability and the idea that you don't have to be anything other than what you are in that moment.
Exactly.
And it would seem like that which we resist also persists. So just like allowing that to be and stating the truth of the moment and then moving on from there. And then she did move on. She didn't just fall into herself. She went on with the play, if you will. Amy, thanks for that story. Stacey, I want to go back and talk about sales. and be very, very transparent here and put you on the spot. We're here right now in a very large part because of Stacy. This is the Riverside platform. Stacy works for Riverside, and one of the reasons why I asked Stacy to come speak with you all is she is by far the best salesperson that I've ever worked with.
Thank you.
Period. You're so welcome. Period. Hands down. It's just a fact. It's not even a compliment. It is just a fact. And I was continually in awe of how you handled our relationship and continue to handle our relationship through the sales process. And I will say now, having been on this platform and having purchased a Riverside subscription for Soho Creative Studio, it was the best decision that we made for the business, period. And I was in awe, Stacy, of just your craft as a salesperson, in that you were doing all the things that you were just talking about briefly before. For anybody that's going into sales, for any of the students listening, this is going to sound like a silly question, but how did you get to be so good? Are you just the natural? Are there things that you picked up along the way? What are some strategies or things that you have learned that continue to make somebody that listens with the intent to understand? And really, one of the big things is that you didn't sell me anything I didn't need. You really took the time to understand how we were going to use this and if it was the right fit or not. So I would just love to hear a little bit about your sales story and how you came to be where you're at, and your degree in, I believe, behavioral economics. That's something that's been of interest to the students as well. So if you want to touch on that, would love to hear that as well.
Absolutely. Firstly, thank you. I appreciate that. And before I get into that, I just wanted to touch on something Amy just previously said to a lesser degree, but the first thing I said coming onto this was, bear with me, it's my first time doing this. And I think leaning into your anxiety and your nerves and situations, it almost makes you more relatable. I'm not so far off from a university graduate. So, I've been on the reverse side of this. So I think just being authentic, which, I've never done this before. If I mess up, bear with me. And I think just, owning it a little bit lessens the anxiety in it. But Michael, I'll jump to your question now. The number one thing I'd say is, to your point, you don't want to be selling something. Obviously, you want to close the sale. It's your job. That's what you obviously want to do at the end of the day. And this will tie directly into behavioral economics. I'm not going to touch upon the textbook definitions of behavioral economics and sales tactics and marketing tactics, but more on a macro level, behavioral economics is understanding why people behave in real life settings, understanding the decision making that goes into why people make decisions. In this case, why people are making certain purchase decisions. And I think that the more that you can understand that, the more you actually want to help the person. You're not just trying to push something on them. You're trying to understand, why are they taking the time out of their day to actually be on the phone with me right now? What are the priorities to them? What's actually going to bring them value? Do they actually need this? And once you can actually fully understand that and unlayer that as much as you can, the more you're actually going to be able to provide them value in a less like pushing something on them, more, I kind of want to be a consultant to you right now. I want to find a solution. I want to provide you value in something that's actually going to be beneficial to you in the long run. And I think that directly ties into what the principles and the core of behavioral economics focuses on.
So it sounds like, Stacey, you're really assuming the role of a trusted guide and not necessarily a salesperson. The sale is like kind of not an afterthought, but a product of being a trusted guide. Is that accurate?
Exactly that. I think the first thing that you want to do is figure out, is this even the right fit for the person? Because, it doesn't make sense to go through an entire process with someone if this is not the right solution for them. So the more that you could actually unlayer and understand, who is this person and why are they on the phone with you, understand really what are their motives at the end of the day, the better you are, and the more trusted you can be to give them and to provide them with the right solution.
So again, it goes back to really seeking first to gather as much information as possible. I mean, how much talking do you do on an initial call? Is it more listening? I mean, if you could label it in a percentage, I don't know if you could, but
yes, 60-40.
Okay, 60% listening, 40% talking.
That's what I would aim for that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well,
So when,
number, but maybe Michael, you can attest to that. How much do I speak on a? I also speak a lot. I'm a loud person, so
no, I mean, I feel that aligns perfectly, when we had our initial calls. But it was, I mean, more importantly, I think it was, I felt heard and I felt understood. And I felt like you really got me and got what we were trying to do. So I think it's more relevant that, and maybe you were talking more or less, I don't know. But really the impact that you had on me was to go, oh, she's actually really listening to me and she's actually trying to help me solve the same. But that was the thing, I think one of the biggest things I got was like, you and I seem to be on the same side of the table trying to solve the same problem, which was made me feel really good and trust you. And I didn't feel like you're trying to give me something that I might not need. So, again, thank you for that. And thanks for showing up today. I want to just interject really quick. We're going to lose Jamie at noon because she's got to teach a class. She's literally going to go from, I think you're in your studio, Jamie. You're going to go from here right to teaching, right? Yeah. In the same space. So if there are questions specifically for Jamie, we're going to field questions for Amy and for Stacy. But if there's anything that's coming up right now for Amy that you all want to ask her, please throw them in the chat and I'll have a look at them. Jamie, one question that did come up is this kind of bridge. Is there a thing that in acting that translates to the business world, especially in terms of communication and presence, or something that you feel in terms of communication and presence that actors use that could translate into day-to-day life?
Absolutely. I think when it comes to being an actor, it's all about staying present, staying connected to the person across the way, moment to moment, and not being ahead of what's going to happen, but to really be in the now of now with them. And because we all want to innately protect ourselves and watch out for danger and survive, we start moving away and in acting, it's always, oh, you're in your head, you're watching yourself. But it's the same thing in business. It's the same thing in your day-to-day life, is to put your focus, again, coming back to what we said to start, always on the other. And that is, to me, one of the number one fundamentals of being an actor. It's also the most important part of being present in the room with somebody. When we think about charismatic people, it's not necessarily traits that they have, but it's more so the way that they make us feel. Anybody I've ever known that has been famously charismatic, they make you feel like the most important person in the room. And the way to do that is to focus engaging and not focus on the way you want to be perceived. We can assume this veil of professionalism that shuts off authenticity and, I don't want people to know that I'm nervous, right? And Stacy walked in, like she said immediately, this is the first time I'm doing this, I'm nervous, and we all relax. So it's just connecting, being present moment to moment with the person, engaging with them, and letting go of the plan a little bit.
Jamie, Jerry Seinfeld talked about that, talked about the room versus Zoom. And the walk from the door to the center of the room before the table was an audition unto itself. And a lot of companies now are saying, you're coming back in. I think it was Amazon said, we're not asking 5 days a week. If you want to work for Amazon, you're going to be in person. So I think there's going to be a trend back to in person. And I speak with a lot of my students. They want to be in person. They want to be amongst their peers. They want to be connected meaningfully with others. What did you, having observed thousands and thousands and thousands of that walk from the door to the center of the room, and for yourself as well, being literally on both sides of the table, having made that walk, having seen that walk, what is it about those actors that walked in where all of a sudden you're just like, what were the qualities that they embodied that caused you to pay attention to them or fall in love with them or whatever that was?
Here's what I come back to, and this is relevant if you're an actor. It's relevant if you're going into any type of business. When you're walking from the door to the table, the door to the chair, you are at that moment the pilot of an aircraft. And I am a nervous flyer. And if I was to watch a pilot get on an airplane like this, we're going to be good, I would be terrified. I would get off the plane immediately. So to walk in and say, sit back, I'm the expert here. I've got my story. I know my story. I'm going to do this. Fun. We're going to enjoy this. Everybody in the space relaxes. And it doesn't have to be walking in with a sense of bravado walking in with, I'm nervous. This is a big opportunity. Like, okay, great. We're relaxed. We're all on the same page, and we're going to trust you to take us on a ride.
Thank you for that, Jamie. I love the Sully reference. So like, be Sully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sully.
I mean,
Write it down.
speaking of bias and prejudice and having come to a certain age now, when I walk on a plane and I see the pilot who's like a little gray behind the ears, obviously landed on a couple aircraft carriers kind of thing, I breathe at ease. But now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like, oh, he's like 20 years younger than me. I start to have a certain kind of fear, not that they're less qualified or they're less qualified, but I'm starting to feel that, but it's not really about age is what I'm hearing. It's really about energy and presence.
Yeah, assuming just owning your expertise. So often we walk into a space and it's, tell me that I'm doing a good job. Tell me I'm good enough, instead of walking in like, oh, I got this. And whatever I don't know yet is just something I don't know yet. I will learn it. I will get better. And to be open to that. It really comes back always, right, to take the armor down. Take the armor down. Own your expertise.
Jamie, thank you for that. Amy, I want to shift gears here because there are different communication styles and different strategies for learning. And you've talked to many a different audience and many a different human all over the world as a storyteller, as a journalist. How would you approach those different communication strategies that are going to be present in any sort of relationship anywhere, whether it's work or whatnot, because some folks are visual, some folks like to listen, some folks are readers. How do you ensure that you're reaching as many people as possible, especially if you're giving a presentation to 30 people, whereas they're all going to have their own individual communication strategy? What would your advice be for that?
Well, there's a couple of questions within that question. I think it's important, if you can, and you're not always able to do this, but if you can know something about your audience, it's really helpful. If you've been invited to speak to a group, you're making a presentation to a department in a company, or you're a keynote speaker or whatever, you're on a panel, who are the people that you're speaking to? And so you might learn something about them. If you do know something about them, then ask yourself, what do I think is most important to these people? So that you can maybe frame your examples in a way that feels inclusive. And I think and then, if you don't know anything about your audience, assume that they are a broad range of people. If you have 30 humans in a room, there are 30 different stories, at least. There could be more than that. And I don't mean multiple personality syndrome, just that, we have a lot of stories. So try to imagine that some people are interested in some things and some people are interested in others. So here's the do not do this. It's more common with men, but it's not exclusive to men. I would leave the sports analogies at the door, because that's a very specific, it tends to be more gender specific. I'm not saying that women do not like sports. Of course we do. But it also is very national. So let's say I'm speaking to a group of people from Japan. They may not know very much about American football. And so using analogies that talk about, goalposts and, how about them, Patriots or whatever your team is, don't do that. Try to have references that are a little broader, that in your examples, not just, and this is a really big one. We live in a huge country, and we are often, the market leader in whatever it is we're talking about. Not always, but often. And yet, there are other countries in the world. There are other cultures. There are other ways of doing things. Most people tend to assume that, we're talking about America. Research shows. What research? Is it research on American audiences and you're speaking in Spain? or you're speaking in China, that research is not applicable to them. So you need to say, I'm going to use an American example, an example from my own country, and then we're going to talk about how that might, and you're the experts here, or I've done some research and found out, lots of ways to play that. But don't assume everyone is familiar with the United States or that everyone buys American brands or uses sports analogies or, and everything, even down to, and this is a whole other conversation, not for today, but the use of visual content. Ask yourself, who am I featuring in these slides? Is everyone male? Is everyone female? Is everyone white? Is everyone in their 30s? Is everyone slim? Is everyone, have gorgeous white teeth? And I'm not saying you have to, by all means, do not go for tokenism. But ask yourself, do I have an opportunity to be more inclusive here? I don't make everything look like the UN's annual report. But at the same time, because people, that can get ridiculous. It can get really silly. I worked for a company. I'll just tell you this and then stop talking. But I did a consulting project for a company that is located in Geneva, Switzerland. And because of the nature of its business, it tended to have exclusively Swiss people, Swiss citizens. They do not have a particularly racially diverse population. They wanted their annual report to feature a number of Black people. They hired Black people for their annual report. Those people don't work there. The staff looked at this and thought, this is absolutely offensive. Why are we doing this? If that's tokenism. So a long answer to a question with lots of component parts, but assume that people have different interests and different things they relate to and try to hit on some of them. At the same time, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, never bullshit. Don't act like, wow, I know all about Australian rugby. One question, and I would be, like the laughing stock of the Western Hemisphere. I don't know anything, or Southern Hemisphere. I don't know anything about Australian rugby. So don't bullshit.
Yeah, Amy, I love your point about assumptions and being careful with what assumptions or not assuming. Don't assume you know that. It's like I always have to tell myself, you don't know, Michael. You do not know. You have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea who this person is. And the only way to know is to ask with the intent to understand and let them speak and listen and to maintain that level of curiosity. And also to the greater point, Amy, that you're making, we live in a global economy now. And the idea that, America is going to just be the only place to do business is just not true. So opening your curiosity up to the world not only helps you grow, it's going to help your business grow as well, because you only have to gain. By opening up curiosity, I don't really think there's anything to lose and only to gain.
Yeah.
Stacy, I had a thought a moment ago about if you could go back, knowing what you know now. It's like I always wish I could go back to Michael of the past and be like, listen, dude, do these things and don't do these things, but I can't. So, everybody in the room here is either a sophomore, junior, or a senior. If you could go back to your time exiting your formal education, and if you were going to go into sales, I see the wheels turning there. Is there some advice that you would give to yourself leaving that, I know we have to have our own experiences and in many instances learn our own lessons, but are there some kind of maybe, I hate the word hack, but maybe some strategies or tactics that you wish you might have employed a little bit sooner on your path?
The one thing, and I've thought this to myself many times, is now where I'm at, I realize the power of keeping relationships and building relationships and maintaining connections with people. And that's not something that I prioritized when I was in university. So I remember when I was in university, like there was times where, I'd apply to a summer internship and get rejected. And okay, that was it. I put it behind me, and I never really thought about it again. Or even, now working with my classmates, people that I met around university, people I met in summer jobs. it was never that big of a priority to me. And I realize now where and this goes to, you know, any relationship I build with in a work setting, anyone who I'm meeting in any professional, like even on a personal level, it's always a priority to me to maintain that relationship somehow. And it doesn't need to be something so dramatic where you're calling the person once a week, but you know, a LinkedIn connection, just checking in with the person, maintaining that connection is, if I could go back in time, I would have prioritized that more when I was actually surrounded by so many people who were, you know, going to be the people that are down the road I'm going to be working with. So yeah, I would go back in time and do that.
So to maintain a connection or open line of communication.
Exactly. Or just maintain that relationship somehow. And, you know, even if a job doesn't work out, you never know if it's not going to work out in 3 months from now, if an opportunity might present itself at a company. And I know that was something big. And, you know, within the past, since I graduated in 2019, or I've probably interviewed upwards of 50 different jobs, and, you know, dozens of them I've been rejected from. Part of that is, and I more so now I do that, but you know, several years back, it wasn't a priority for me to maintain that connection with the company.
Awesome. Stacy, thank you for that. As we're about to lose Jamie, Laura had a question for Jamie, and I wanted you to see her face and have Laura ask a question on her own.
Hello.
Laura, you're muted, Laura, and we're going to unmute you. There you are.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's working now. All right. Hello, everyone. So, Jamie, my question for you, kind of relating to both acting and communication, is as an acting coach, how do you teach actors to communicate authenticity and empathy, like in performances with characters that they may not personally relate to?
That's such a great question. One of the things that actors will sometimes say when they were prepping sides is, I would never do that. And that's never the question. I would never behave like that. The question is always, when in my own circumstances do I behave this way? And the great thing, Laura, is that from that question, you start to see how everybody can relate to pretty much every situation out there. Because when I am nervous, maybe I tell more jokes. And if you're seeing a character, they're making a lot of inappropriate jokes, they're nervous. Something's at stake here. Or if you see characters getting into a fight, there's pain. So you're always looking for what is the behavior underneath what it is they're actually saying. And in that way, we've experienced all of it.
Jamie, thank you for that. Laura, great question. And thanks for popping on, Laura. Jamie, we're about to lose you. So I will say, do you have any parting words or thoughts before you go teach?
Oh, gosh. Yes. Thinking about the question that you asked, Stacy, you know, if there was something that you would have done differently coming out of school, a question I would have asked more people who are more advanced in their careers would have been, tell me about the first year of your career. Not tell me where you are now, 20 years in, 30 years in, because I'm not there. Tell me the first year. Tell me what the first moments felt like when you first quit that job, when you first took that leap, because that's what you need to be looking at. Steven Spielberg said this great thing of, do not compare my Saving Private Ryan to your student film. If you're going to look at my early student films, look at the first things I made. So often we're comparing ourselves to people so far advanced in their careers. And really the thing to always come back to is, what risks did you take? What do you think you could have risked more of in the very first year when nobody knew what you were doing? That would be my biggest, go back and do that over again.
Jamie, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. I love that you're doing this, and what a thrill to speak on this panel. Thank you for having me. And I'm so sorry I have to leave.
No worries. Have a great class.
All right. Thank you. Thank you
Sorry,
all.
Jamie.
Bye.
We're going to continue the conversation. Jack's calling in, and I'm going to say yes to Jack. Here we go.
Hi guys, how
Jack
are you?
Ryan. What's up, brother?
Nothing much. So Stacy, I am very interested and I'm studying sales here at UNH. And just a quick question for you. So with your expertise in sales, how do you tailor communication to influence buyer behavior without coming across pushy?
Go back to the answer that I gave Michael earlier as it relates to understanding the buyer that you're talking to, and less so pushing a product on them. If the more that you can actually understand your buyer and unlayer, really work as a team with them. And Amy, this kind of ties into what you said. You're partnering with the person that you're talking to. You know, you want to be on the same side as your buyer in the sense that you're in this together. You're trying to figure out, is this the right solution for them? And if you kind of take the lens as being that trusted advisor to Michael, to use your words there, to be that trusted advisor for the person that you're talking to, and understand exactly really what they need, what are their priorities, you'll be better able to provide them with the value directly to what they need. And it's the same I think in any profession. And when you're talking to two different people, every person has different needs, has different wants. And the more that you can specify that for each person you're talking to, the more effective you'll be at communicating and providing them with value.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Jack, did that cover it, man?
Yeah, of
Cool, brother. Thanks for hopping on.
course.
Amy, I want to, you have been asked actually. There's some folks considering graduate school, or maybe this is going to be it for them. Some folks didn't even want to go to undergrad. You've spent some time and repetitions in higher education. One of the questions was, what inspired you to continue to kind of pick up degrees along the way? And they weren't all in the same field. We'll let you answer. Actually, hold on. We'll let you answer that. Then Emily has got the next question.
Okay. Well, I'm very fortunate in that I am a total nerd. I always loved school. I loved it. Not gym class, but the rest of it. And I had a natural orientation towards school. But what I found was that I never wanted to get stale, so it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go for a degree program. I took a course in New York on decorating wedding cakes. That had nothing to do with what I was doing, but I wanted to learn how to make flowers out of frosting. I've taken class. I did. What do I do with it? Nothing. But it was fun. And I think that when we ask our brains to think in another way, and to do so collaboratively with other people in the class, whatever that class is, whether it's a degree program or it isn't, it's about the learning. It's not, certainly I didn't choose to go get an MFA because I thought the big bucks were going to be out there, by becoming an artist. No, actually the opposite. But I've learned so much. In getting an MFA, which I'm just about done with, I'll finish in May, I have learned more about how I go about resolving problems and finding solutions, and how I can expand my repertoire in problem solving than I learned in all my career in business. It's a different way of doing it. It's, okay, get out the duct tape and felt tip pens and, and rip up some paper and use elastic bands. I'm sort of making that up, but that's what you learn when you go take class, or ask yourself, and here's the key, ask yourself to be a beginner. Ask yourself to not know. And to accept your role of not yet knowing, so that when I then walk into a client situation or teaching a class, or I am able to touch base with, to remember what it feels like to not know about something. I don't know how to do that. So what kinds of questions might I ask if I didn't know how to do it? And to allow yourself to be a beginner again and again and again and again. Oh my God, you get so smart because you lose the ego.
Amy, piggybacking on what Jamie said earlier, So leaving undergrad, I mean, I can't speak for my students, but for myself, when I left after 7 years of school, I was done. I didn't want to, I was done with school, at least for that time being. And then that actually changed very quickly. Um, uh, it sometimes feels like there's school for my job purpose and then school for just for fun purposes. Would you, if you were going back to, leaving undergrad, what would be your advice to the students who have, put in their 4 years here? It's been a tough 4 years, a challenging 4 years. Would you recommend they go learn something that they're just inclined to do? And do you think that there's value in that, even if you can't really maybe see a connection at the time?
So my immediate response is a hugely enthusiastic yes, but we also live on planet Earth. And so you have to remember a few things. There are costs. You might, as you're building your career, you're probably going to work a lot, and you're going to be tired, and you're just learning how to work. So I think that maybe instead of thinking about it as taking lots and lots of classes, it's this. Don't lose the curiosity. Keep feeding your head, as they said in Alice in Wonderland, whatever that is, whatever it is. Maybe you want to learn a foreign language, or maybe you want to take up hip hop, or you don't know how to swim. Go learn how to swim. It's a great thing to do. And so I think to the extent possible, always indulge curiosity and ask. I've never regretted anything I've learned how to do. Some stuff I do more with, some stuff I don't, but I'm always learning. And
That was my next question, and you've already answered it, whether you've done something like, I wish I didn't learn that. But it sounds like there is a place and a space for everything that you've indulged in. Cool. Emily is following along the education theme. Emily has a question. She's calling in, and I would love to bring her on. I think this question is for Stacy. Emily, thanks for signing on.
It is. My chat just went away, so hold on so I can read it again.
No worries.
For Jamie, and this kind of goes off what Amy was saying about being curious about other things. I have never heard of...
for Stacy. For
Stacy, but I was going off of what Amy was saying about being curious. But the question is for Stacy. Hold on a second. I'd never heard of behavioral economics before, and at first I was like, "Ooh, economics, no." And then I saw the behavioral part, and I was a little excited about it because I like, studying behaviors in people, and researched a little bit about it and thought it was super interesting because I've never heard of that before. But has there ever been a study? Have you ever conducted a study where the results weren't what you were anticipating or thought they would be? And what was the study and outcome?
Ooh, that's a great question. And just to start off with a little bit of my background in behavioral economics, and Amy, this is going to also tie into your point. And, I actually, my background was completely in finance. I went to business school. I was working in finance. I was working in tax for a few years. So I was really on the opposite side of completely just opposite to what behavioral economics was. And I got super interested in it. Someone recommended a book to me, and then it became just a passion of mine. And I was doing my own research, reading a lot about behavioral economics. And I actually decided to do a master's degree in it purely out of curiosity and just out of interest. And I didn't really expect it to change anything dramatically in my career. I was good at what I was doing. I didn't hate my job, but I was not obsessed with it either. But I ended up doing a degree in behavioral economics, and actually that was the catalyst that completely switched my career path. So it's kind of what Amy was saying earlier, to always stay curious. You never know what it's going to lead you to, and that's it. Actually, what ended up learning about behavioral economics is what steered me into being in sales. And in regards to studies, there's so many that I can actually send over, and I think we should connect offline, because I could actually spend like 30 minutes talking about interesting studies, and I could also send you over some cool things that I've looked up that I've been super curious about. So if it is something that you're interested in, then we can get more into different studies and all that stuff offline as well.
Thanks.
Thank you for that, Stacey. And Emily, thank you for your question.
Absolutely.
We're going to take one from Mikey's got a question for Amy. We're going to bring Mikey on. Mikey, thanks for signing on.
Awesome. You can hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. So my question for Amy is, how has your experience across different media platforms sort of shaped and changed your approach to journalism and storytelling?
Great question. Wow. So I started life with print because I love to write, and I kind of voluntarily, kicking and screaming, but also excited, and I'll explain in a second, I made a switch into television. So I was kicking and screaming because I thought, oh, television, it's kind of shallow and whatever. But the good part was I was moved from New York to London. So it was kind of, oh, yeah, all right, I'll do that. What I learned, it was really good for me to move into video into TV, because I learned that you tell a story really differently, whether you have to create the scene in somebody's mind with words, or you can show them. And there are different responsibilities that go with both. And the real difficult part about video is that it is so damned convincing. People think if they've seen it, it happened. This is particularly now. I mean, now that we can do anything, we can manipulate video and sound to look like Nancy Pelosi was drunk and was saying all these things, and that didn't actually happen. And so what I think those different experiences and those different media forms, they each have their upsides and they each have their downsides. And I'm happy about this. Journalism takes a really bad rap these days, and much of it is, self-induced. So there's a limit to my empathy, but I think the more that journalists can operate on more than one platform, more than one type of media, the better we become at storytelling. The appropriate use of a visual. This needs a still. This needs a video. This needs a graphic. This needs text. And that leads us into multimedia storytelling, which I think is just a beautiful way to represent multiple viewpoints and perspectives, and to do so in a way that's fair to more than one perspective, so that we dilute or, hopefully eliminate, but you can never really eliminate, but you dilute the bias that's implicit. So, I would say the more experience we can get, and let's not leave out audio. Audio is such a huge player now, podcasts, and who doesn't love to listen to someone? We grow up as children listening to stories. We love it. And we fantasize about what it looks like, and then, find out, oh, they really look like that? Yeah, oh, okay. And so I think that each one has a great place, but the more that you can experiment with, the better. So it's made me a better storyteller.
Amy, thank you for that. We have Mikey, hang out for a second. Brandon's got a question for Stacy. That'll be our last question. Mikey, I'd like to rope you into the conversation here. What's, in your view, do you lean towards any particular mediums as an individual?
Right.
Video, sound, or are there any things that are particularly engaging for you, or preferences that you have?
Like Amy said, I listen to a ton of podcasts.
I love them.
If I'm working, doing anything, even just like doing the dishes around the house, like I just like to listen to something. And so that's definitely my main right now.
Is that because you're able to do other things at the same time and listen in the background? What is it about the just being audio is attractive for you?
It definitely like helps me multitask. Like multitasking almost helps me be more efficient at what I'm doing.
Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So like if I'm doing something boring, like washing the dishes, almost listening to something interesting through a podcast almost makes that thing go faster for me.
I do it on my walks. I love walking, but it's like I'm not wasting my time because I'm listening to something and I'm bettering myself. Is that kind of the thought process behind it? Okay.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah. And do you like longer form stuff? You don't like 3 hour stuff, hour stuff? Is there a particular length of time that you enjoy listening to, or it doesn't matter?
It doesn't really matter because if it's a 3-hour thing and I don't need 3 hours, I'll split it up and I'll do half and half or whatever.
Cool, man. I'm going to put you on the spot one more time. Is there your favorite podcast that you have or something you listen to? I'm always looking for material. If you're comfortable.
I listen to a few. I listen to like a few comedians, and then I listen mostly though to like sports podcasts.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Cool, man. Mikey, thanks for hopping on and thanks for offering your 2 cents. Pleasure.
Yeah.
Going to take one more question from Brandon. This is a great career question, actually. I think for Stacy. Brandon, thanks for signing on.
Yeah, thank you both for coming on and answering some questions for us. I appreciate your time. For Stacy, as a senior going into the workforce next year, I noticed that you have multiple different organizations under your belt over the last 5 to 6 years. So how have you kind of known it's time for you to move on to the next thing? And when you are doing that, how do you leverage your past experiences to continue moving up on the ladder? I notice you're now an account executive, which is a goal of mine someday.
Switching jobs, a lot of that has been just location based for me, and I was moving a bit, so that was part of the reason why there was a bit of job shift. But I actually think the shifting around different jobs is, I think super valuable at the beginning of a career, just to really understand what do you like and what do you not like. And I think that to get me to where I am today in a job that I really do love, I first actually went in the path that I thought I was actually going to end up in. And this is what I studied. And this was the path that I thought I was, this is what I was going down. And to work in that for a few years and figure out this is actually not what I liked was important for me to, to experience that firsthand. And just how you leverage that. I think it all comes down to, again, this is going to go back to the relationship building, but something that's been consistent across all the different jobs I've had, whether they've been in different industries and different types of positions, has been, building connections and working directly with clients. And you see that in a lot of different jobs. And I think that's something that I've tried to leverage in each place I've gone to, is that connection building that you do have. And I think it translates very well into sales. I know you mentioned that's your long-term goal, but I think the base of sales is building relationships with people, which you can find that in almost any organization.
Brendan, did that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, man. Thanks for hopping on. So we're running out of time here. I think our last thing we'll do is a bit of a wrap up. It was funny. A question that popped in my head, Amy, is, Amy, can you summarize everything we've said, or everything you've said at least? But I think I'll ask a better question than that. That we're closing out, and maybe taking into consideration, Amy, your experience and maybe what we've talked about so far in this last, almost hour and a half. What would be maybe some parting thoughts, words, ideas that you'd like to share at this moment?
I want to take my own advice and give you something personal from my own life that I think has made such a difference, and I'm very pleased with it. I spent 14 years working with a business partner who's 20 years younger than I am. And he's a digital native, and or damn close to being a digital native, very comfortable with all things digital. And because we came at things so differently, I learned so much from him. I think I learned as much, if not more, from him than he learned from me. And that is a direct outgrowth of the curiosity and the be a beginner mindsets. Because otherwise I would say, come on, he's 26 years old. What does he know? He knows a ton. He knows a ton about the way people see the world now. He knows it in a way I would never know it. To watch him with digital technology, I look like, and he's off and running. And it wasn't just learning tips and techniques. It's the way he came at problems, the way he thought. And I was the type that would say, oh, I can't believe they can't get into the office before 8:30. And he'd be like, who cares? If they work at midnight, I don't care. They could show up at 1 p.m. And this was just a small example of the differences between us. But working with him, I learned to appreciate a totally different way of being and seeing the world. And that made me a much better person.
I would even go so far, if I may, Amy, to say to my students, how do you know the mark of a good leader? Well, Amy just laid it out. It's going to be someone that's curious about you. And I would say that if you're ever in question, is my boss a good leader? It sounds like what I'm taking from everyone, all the panelists and students included, the level of curiosity they have about you is in direct proportion to how strong a leader they are. And if they're a know-it-all, don't want your opinion, because I'm a firm believer, everybody has something to offer. And experience is important. But Amy, thank you so much for sharing that. Stacy, I'll come to you to wrap things up and not ask you, encapsulate everything we've talked about. I would say, given what we've spoke about so far and your own experience, what would you like to share with the class?
I guess that given I'm assuming most students are getting into the phase of the interview processes and just stepping into their the working world. It's not so long ago for me. It's only been since 2019. So I would say that the biggest advice I'd have is it's okay to take a lot of different risks, and it's at the beginning of your career, and this is something that I still try and remind myself is there's so much opportunity to try different things and figure out what you like. And it's okay if you think that you're supposed to be going down one path and then you figure out once you're there that it's not the right path for you. And that's what really lets you and enables you to get to the place that you're supposed to be. And it's okay to keep taking those risks.
So it sounds like that pressure we can put on ourselves to figure out what we're going to do. It sounds like it might be healthy and even helpful not to do that.
Oh yeah. You asked earlier, what's something that you would go back and tell your younger self? I would say to myself, like, it's really okay that you don't have it figured out, and you don't have to have your entire career paved out at 21 years old.
Amy, Stacy, Jamie, and Spirit, thank you so much for taking your time to share your insights, to field questions. I can't wait. I hear the students' feedback. Students, excellent work today. Great questions. Thanks for tuning in. I know we really couldn't see all of you, but I can feel your presence there leaning in. So is Amy, can the students reach out to you if they have some further questions?
Delighted.
What's the best way to do that?
Either by email or on Insta.
Great. I'll share those two channels. Stacy, if the students want to continue a conversation or hear about some studies or something like that, what's the best way for them to do that if it's okay with you?
Absolutely. And LinkedIn, I think maybe Michael, we have each other on LinkedIn, so that would be best way to contact me.
Fantastic. And I will share those two items on Canvas for a follow-up for this. But Amy and Stacy, we're going to stay on. Class, have a great day, and I will see you next week.
And thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. I can't see you guys, but thank you.
Yeah.